Yeah, but how's it going, Rob?
Hello?
Hey, Davis, we can hear you. It's Gretch.
Hey,
Hi.
can I try sharing my screen?
Sure enough. Hang on, I'll go on video. Wait 1 second. Hi there.
Hey,
It's working.
It's good, Davis.
okay. All right.
Hey, Nathan.
Nathan Mensky.
Hey guys,
How's your fam, honey?
good, good. We went
Good.
camping this past weekend and it was a nice to get away to truly, we pretty much locked our cell phones in a cabinet and
Awesome,
just
Nathan.
enjoyed
That's
being-
great news.
yeah, it was good.
Baby getting big, huh, Nathan?
It's getting a little crazy over here.
Exactly.
As if it weren't crazy beforehand.
Yeah,
Serious.
but they're good. They're good.
Hey, Nathan, thanks for responding on that.
Yeah, you're
Awesome.
welcome.
I'll talk to you on Monday.
Yeah, and thank you. Thank you.
Nathan, when you get a second, you send a picture of those babies my way, okay? I
Okay.
haven't seen them in a while.
Let me see what I got here. It was tough too, because we were so used to having our phones and taking pictures, but because we locked them up, the whole camping trip pretty much didn't exist on our, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's the only thing we missed out, but the girls had a blast, so that's all that matters. I'll take them having that much fun and not having pictures. It was awesome.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, Nathan.
Where'd you go camping?
There's just a local like RV trailer park that's only about 10 miles from our house. It's called Turkeyville. So as you can imagine, there's a bunch of turkeys and whatnot. Yeah, so it's just like a local
Awesome.
place. Yeah, so it was fun. It was fun. Weather was great too, so.
I don't think you want to be more than 10 miles from home with that crew at this point in your lives.
Yeah.
You need an emergency exit plan.
Yeah.
Morning, Jenny.
Good morning. Good morning. How's
Gwen?
everyone?
How's Gwen, Jenny?
She is good. She's in Boston. She's got a job. She's coming here at the end of the month. So next week. So I'm excited.
Great. Safe and healthy all as well?
All is well, safe and healthy. Yes. Yes.
Morning, Hannah.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a few more minutes. We're expecting quite a few more people. I'm so happy to have all of you joining us this morning.
You want to see something funny? For some reason, my box says Tammy Anderson, who works in my
Yeah.
office. I don't know how that happened. I just clicked the link that was sent to me, and definitely not Tammy Anderson, but she does work for Wayne County. So.
He registered you, man. You can rename yourself by clicking on the 3 little dots in the upper right corner.
Ah,
Now, there you go.
I'm actually on my, more. Let's see. And minimize meeting settings. No. I'm on my
Usually
phone because my laptop is not
yeah,
working.
I got you. It's usually hovering over your picture somewhere is a little, but I don't know how that works on the phone.
It's okay. I'll just be Tammy Anderson for now until I get my laptop up.
It would be kind of fun if we all changed our name to Tammy Anderson.
Right. I got to get one of those cool pictures that you will have up, a picture of yourself. So nice.
Here's my Zoom weird thing is like sometimes my picture shows up, especially if it's my meeting, it always shows up, but then sometimes it doesn't.
Oh,
The
wow.
exact same thing happens.
Delilah.
So if it's mine, then you're right, I do. But like when I come into this meeting, when I stop my video, it just has my name, like my picture doesn't show.
But then sometimes mine will, like on MCPA meetings, it shows, but on like a random meeting, it doesn't.
The mysteries of the world.
Really? Okay. 27. So we have about 60 people registered. I know that not everyone who registered will be here. So let's wait just a couple more minutes. Good to see people this morning.
Jenny, I'm not sure if you had anybody else from MCC, from Muskegon.
I don't remember, Brandy. I think, no, not Brandy, not Brandy.
Patty.
Sorry, Patty. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Oh,
Yeah. I don't think so. We're in the middle of 2-week furloughs.
Yeah, other people are in the same, have informed me that they're in the same place, so.
Yeah. We have
Um,
75 people out this week.
Wow, yeah. Let me see. Okay. Okay. People are, let's see, we got a chat. No problem, Bev. Happy you can be with us. I also never know when I'm going to have to turn off my video. Now that I have now that I have a hotspot, we're better with Zoom, 2 Zooms going at the same time in my house, but. Okay. It is 9:02. Let's go ahead and start the meeting officially. Good morning, everyone. For those of you who I have not met who are on this call, I am Jenny Shanker from the Michigan Center for Student Success, and I would like to welcome you to our Guided Pathways 2.0 Institute 6 and Michigan Student Success Network meeting on this kind of cloudy July morning. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Except, let's do that. Okay. And I'm happy to have you all here. I am joined by, as usual, by my fantastic colleagues from the Center for Student Success, with the exception of Precious Miller, who had a new baby boy who decided that he didn't want to wait anymore. And he didn't care that Precious was supposed to be at this meeting and decided to come yesterday. So congratulations to Precious, and wanted to just let you know that she's not here, but Eric, the fabulous Erica Oriens and Katie Giardello are here with us supporting this meeting. We have found that our meetings go best when we have a good team supporting. Someone is not on mute. Thank you. That's great. Thanks. It's just much easier, especially with we got a fair.
Jenny, you're cutting out, so you may need to end your video.
Okay. Well, it's been nice seeing you.
Hey, Jenny, that was me. Sorry, I muted everybody, including you. My bad. I wanted to be in charge. I wanted to be in charge of this meeting. No, I thought it would be helpful if all the participants were muted. So you're fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
That team effort seems to be working pretty well right now. So just another word.
All right. Yes.
We know who's been messing with your Zoom, Jenny.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
They said
Katie's been the one messing with your Zoom.
Yeah, it's me. These are my secret plans to take over the center. You'll notice she introduced Erica as the fabulous Erica Oriens. And then there was me.
Introduce you later, Katie, as with your special title.
Oh,
okay?
thank you. Okay, good. I'll wait for that. All right. Sorry for the interruption, folks.
That's okay. All right. So as facilitators today for this meeting, we have a wonderful group, and I'm excited because we have back together again Rob Johnstone, Gretchen Schmidt, and Davis Jenkins, who were at our very first Guided Pathways meeting in 2014 at Mid-Michigan College. Raise your hand if you were part of that meeting. Is there anybody on this line besides me who is part of that meeting? Let's see. Scroll through and see.
It's probably a good thing.
It's probably a good thing. Oh, Mara was there. Jill, hi, Jill.
I was in high school, just so
Yeah, I think,
everybody
yeah, me too,
knows.
right? Uh-huh.
So,
All right. Oh, Lori. Yes, Laura. Tanya, Patty. All right. Oh, fantastic. Well, good. And then we are also joined by Hannah, who was actually in high school at that time. No, just kidding, Hannah. But glad to have you with us. And we will be talking about how we know that the student experience has been transformed by the Guided Pathways efforts. But before we do that, I have a few things that I just want to go through. We are also joined today by our Guided Pathways mentors, Lindsay Dickinson, Paige Egan, and Bev Stanbro and Nathan Vensky, who will be helping out in the small group conversations. This is a fantastic program that we are looking to grow in the next few months, but this idea of developing our core stakeholders as mentors and leaders and coaches for you as you're implementing not only Guided Pathways, but the work beyond. So welcome to those mentors. Here's a little quick tutorial on how to rename yourself. If you click on your participant list in the system tray, it's helpful for us and the facilitators to know where you're from. So go over here to your little more button, rename yourself, add your college. We request a name in the meeting, but unless you all want to change your name to Tammy Anderson, as Brian was experiencing this morning. But anyway, rename yourself to include your college. We found that's been helpful for people to keep track of who's from where. The Zoom engagement tools are the typical ones, the chat box, the raising of hands. Because we're a large group, I would ask for you to raise your hand for us to unmute you. Otherwise, we'll keep everyone muted. And hopefully that will, this is all familiar to everybody on this meeting. I'm sure it's your 1,487th Zoom, perhaps of this month. So we have a bunch of initiatives going on at the Center for Student Success, as you can see from this slide. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking today about the My Best initiative, and what we're you'll hear more about this at the end of the meeting, but we are working really hard to align all of the work that we are doing kind of under the framework of the Guided Pathways transformation that you've all been working on. So everything fits into it. Everything really kind of develops or expands on an aspect of Guided Pathways. And I want to just focus on My Best today, which is also, we are also lucky to have Rob and his team supporting the My Best initiative. And I just wanted to give you a few updates on that. So actually I'm gonna let Erica take over for a moment.
Great, thanks, Jenny. So I am a poor substitute for Precious, who was supposed to be doing this today, but like Jenny said, she had a baby and a little bit early yesterday, so she's not able to join us. I think I noticed many of you who are on the call here are probably really familiar with our My Best project, which focuses on financial stability and economic stability. As Jenny said, we're partnering with NCII and Robin Priya to provide a lot of support for this project. The goals really focus on three main areas: understanding the needs of students in our community, integrating economic stability practices into your existing student supports, and then of course sharing those best practices across Michigan as well. The project kicked off in January of 2020, just 2 months before we all experienced a significant health and economic crisis. So We, in some ways, wish this project had started last year, but we're very grateful that we have the resources and the support available to community colleges to help you through some of the things that you're experiencing now as you're trying to support students through COVID, through other social and economic issues that are happening in your communities. Jenny, do you want to go on to the next slide?
I do.
You'll try. We are so fortunate that when we designed this grant, we decided to focus primarily on virtual events. And the reason that we did that is because this particular topic requires engagement from folks at the community college, but also partnerships with people in the community. And we knew that it would be challenging for community partners to come to a lot of in-person events. So fortunately, now that we've moved all of our events to virtual events, this actually fits very nicely into our work that we're doing. So this is just a few of the past events we had. And then on the next slide, I want to focus on a couple of events that one event that we recently had and one that's coming up later in July. First of all, we have a website that's michiganbest.org that will lead you out to resources and links to be able to register for some of our events. Two things I'll point out that I think are a nice overlap between the work we're doing in MyBest and the work that you've been doing in Guided Pathways. So the first one is a webinar that we hosted last week that was about trauma-informed advising. We partnered with a faculty member from NC State. And I know, I'm looking at my list, I know many of you were there, and I don't think it's an overstatement to say it was a extremely engaging 90 minutes that really focused on trauma and what our students are experiencing over these last few months when it relates to trauma. But then also, I think for many people on the call, it was really kind of a personal opportunity to really reflect on the trauma that you've all gone through as well. Some of us described it as a 90-minute therapy session for free. So I would encourage you to go check that out. Some recordings are not, some events are not great when they're recorded. This is an event that I think will come across really well when it's recorded. We were in the process of getting that recording posted when Precious's baby arrived yesterday. So we'll get that up on the website as soon as possible. And then next week, we're hosting another webinar in partnership with the Michigan Association of United Ways. And some of you may be familiar with a report that we've featured before called ALICE, which stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And the report really features families in Michigan who really live above the poverty line, but don't make enough money to really function, to be able to cover all of their expenses. The data in the ALICE report is available statewide. It's also available by county, and it's even broken down by township within a county. And so it is it's a fantastic resource that I would encourage you to share widely across your campus so that you and your faculty and staff have a better understanding of what the economic situation is in your own individual communities. This webinar will provide an overview of the ALICE report, but the reason that we're delivering it in July is because we think that it would be helpful for those of you who are planning your faculty development days for this fall, that several colleges have already shared this with their faculty who thought that it was really engaging, really helpful data to help them understand a little bit more about your communities. So look for that webinar. I will put the registration link in the chat. And then we can share that information with you. There will be many more events that are happening throughout the year. And so if you want to bookmark that michiganbest.org webpage, that will be a great place to go. And then finally, Jenny, if you want to move on to the next slide, some of you know that the Center for Student Success has started engaging more with colleges through and through our people that typically attend our events through Twitter. And we have scheduled 3 tweet chats this summer, which we're calling Twitter Tuesdays. The first one was on June 30th, where we talked about various different kinds of pathways. And the next one is next Tuesday, July 28th. That is focused on My Best. So all of those Twitter chats are at noon. And so if you want to mark your calendar for the tweet chat at noon, and then get your Twitter handle up to date, then we would love to chat with you about all of the My Best work that you're doing on Twitter. So unless there are any other questions, Jenny, that's all I had.
Thank you. I wanted to just highlight also that Katie has been anxious for me to introduce her as our tweeter in chief, and she will be tweeting insights from the meeting as they come up. And so if you are on Twitter, please follow us, please follow along, please tweet your thoughts on the meeting, and let's get some conversation going out there in the Twitter sphere. So thank you all. And that's really it for the updates from MCSS, unless people have questions. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and transition to our facilitators, and I think we're starting with CCRC, and you guys can just go ahead and share your slides. I will stop my screen share, and it should be possible, Hannah or Davis, whoever is sharing your slides, to put those up.
Rob, you're the Grand Poobah. Do you really want us to start out? Do you have any?
No. You guys absolutely go. You guys started this whole thing, man. You got to start this part.
Okay. Well, don't you love how academics, can you see the screen?
Yep.
State the obvious, that we're in some deep stuff here. And so we've been thinking, you guys are really in the thick of it. We've been thinking about, not just this fall, and thinking about you all the time, and are humbled by everyone we talk to in the field, the community colleges, the 4 years freaking out, wonder how they're going to have their, cognac parties when you guys are out there putting hot spots in library parking lots, really reaching out to your students. So thank you for what you're doing. But just thinking, not just in the fall, but moving forward, obviously, students are going to be financially strapped. They're going to want programs that enable them to secure stable jobs, whatever those look like, and good jobs in the longer term. We think in Michigan and elsewhere, demand for high school dual enrollments that save money and time for students to get a bachelor's degree in their field of interest will increase. Students are going to face higher levels of trauma. We're all facing trauma, but it's going to be even more important to, engage students, to connect with students, even before we talk about programs and teaching. And unfortunately, what we've already been seeing, I think, it's going to intensify competition from online. We call them degree completion providers, with promise students the world and package in, iPads, but really are not, in our view, really helping students really learn. The regional publics in Michigan and elsewhere are going to be really hungry for students, as will the less selective privates. So there's going to be more of what we've seen. And unfortunately, there's going to be less state funding. So we're going to have to really work together even more than we had in the past. So in terms of the guided pathways, we've been talking to colleges across the country, and those that have moved in the guided pathways direction seem to be much better off to make the pivot. And those that, are not, or, aren't as far along, see an interest and commitment to continue this. But in terms of the Guided Pathways strategies, given the needs of students in the COVID world, it's going to be even doubly, triply important that students are in a program that, you know, either leads to a good job or transfer with junior standing in a major. That's sort of basic, but this really focuses it because our students are, you know, they've got to continue to get education to the extent that they can. After the Great Recession, we saw a increase in returns, or at least strong, stable returns to college degrees, especially bachelor's degrees and degrees with skill, and you know, declining sort of income and stature for those students who don't have college degrees. We think this is only going to accelerate. Skills training, while important, is not going to be enough to get people out of poverty. You need degrees and skills. So especially because, you know, it's always been important not just to, you know, help students explore careers, but to really connect them with faculty, experienced students, alumni, and people in their field of interest. The idea with Guided Pathways is you're engaging students. What Vince Tinto and Kay McClenny have said for years is true. You got to engage students, but in a community college, you're engaging them in a sort of an academic and career community. Given students trauma, given students, you know, need to connect with someone other than their 3-year-olds running around the house, they're really going to, this connection is going to be even more important. And it can be done online too. Students really have to, you're going to have an opportunity to, probably for students coming back, taking, who are at 4 years, taking courses at your colleges. We just came out with a study that found that 4-year students who take community college courses, you know, selected courses, a small number, actually do much better. And it's especially effective for students of color and students in STEM, because, you know, this is a testament, we think, to, you know, the strong teaching and small classes of community colleges. So we think one way to keep these students and new students coming in is to really give a student that, you know, courses that light the fire for learning in their first term, when, you know, and then ensure that every student, you know, is helped to think about their goals and develop a plan. So we recently came out with a sort of a guide and tool. You guys are in Michigan generally are far ahead as in this work, but even with states and colleges that, you know, have been at this, we find sometimes people get sort of they lose momentum. A lot of colleges, as probably happened in Michigan early on, got sort of hung up with mapping. So we came out with this tool, which we think is useful because it brings us back to basics. And the basic questions of Guided Pathways is Guided Pathways to what? The basic idea of Guided Pathways, or one of the key ideas, was students aren't completing programs because the programs they're in aren't leading anywhere. They're not leading to transfer in a major. And many workforce programs aren't leading toward good jobs, or they're in pre-programs like pre-health or pre-nursing, where they're, you know, not yet in a program that would lead to a good job and further education. So this is sort of an analysis that we've been focusing on the last couple of years, for the last year really, to get people focused. And then the big question of equity is who is in the programs that lead somewhere? Who is in the programs that lead to high opportunity careers and further education? And do we see inequities in access to these programs? So we know that, you know, not every associate degree is high returning. This is from the Georgetown Center for Education and Workforce thing that just came out, in which they looked at the returns to different types of associate degrees. You see, not surprising, engineering, healthcare, law enforcement, the construction and trades, business management, agriculture. Those are the high returning, according to CEW. These are based on national figures, and it's going to vary locally, but this generally rings true. When we look at the associate degrees that Michigan Community Colleges awarded, less than 40% were in these high return areas. Other degrees like liberal arts and the like, which are maybe more transfer oriented, have less of a labor market return. This is consistent with what we found. And the idea with liberal arts and transfer is that those degrees really aren't going to have much of a labor market return unless students are able to transfer and get a bachelor's degree. Here's the CEW on certificates, engineering technologies, and drafting, and this is based on a survey of workers and based on their self-report. So this is all workers between the ages of 25 and 64. These aren't entry-level wages, but you know, those that pay over 40,000 at the median are probably, you know, better jobs. So we have engineering technology, manufacturing, production, law enforcement, or firefighting, although we've sometimes found that those certificates by themselves don't necessarily lead to good jobs, and then the construction trades. And in Michigan, less than a third of the certificates that community colleges you guys awarded in, you know, latest data we have available from iPads were in those areas. It's about similar to the national average. So in general, like I mentioned before, this is from another CEW report that looks at good jobs that pay a minimum of 35 grand for workers between 25 and 44, and at least 45 grand between 45 and 64. You see the trend, you know, a long-term trend of increasing returns to individual workers with bachelor's or higher. And this flat returns to the so-called middle skills pathway. This has to do with a lot of things, automation, but also these middle skill jobs, as you probably know better than I do, you know, there's still those jobs available. They're still actually quite skilled, but because of the decline of unionization and rise in corporate power, they pay a lot less than they did before. And Michigan knows this really well. So those jobs are available, but maybe they're paying $14 an hour with no benefits. You know, to invest in a year-long certificate program in manufacturing, in a machining technology or something, may not be worth the return to those kind of degrees. There are exceptions, but generally this is the trends we're looking at. And these are the latest 6-year outcomes for Michigan. Actually, Michigan's in terms of, the about 41% of students who started a community college, this is by state, obviously. Nationally, about 41% of students who started a community college finish any kind of credential, bachelor's, certificate, associate in 6 years. Michigan is actually, you're below the national average here, but it's actually you're pretty close to average. About 21% complete a certificate or associate degree as your highest degree, and 18% complete a bachelor's degree. 14% of Michiganders or Michigan Community College students who started community college are still enrolled 6 years later. So if we got them across the finish line quicker, you know, Michigan would be at the top of the nation in terms of completion. So you know, this idea of helping students complete within 6 years something, even if they're going part-time, has really got to be a focus even more now. And, you know, this is where we think the dual enrollment especially can come in. And these are national figures, but as we know, the highest outcomes, there's major disparities by race. only 10% of African Americans who started a community college nationally get a bachelor's degree, compared to 26% of Asians and 22% of whites. So, given those trends and the returns to bachelor's degrees and higher, this is obviously something we got to work on. So, Guided Pathways involves this reorganizing around meta majors, which many of you have already done, and but maybe what we need to do, especially now and continuing on, is not just make sure that the programs are rationalized and that students are helped to explore and get in a program, but see who's getting into what programs, and to really take stock of which programs don't advance opportunities and which students are overrepresented in these low opportunity programs, and how can we better help students connect and build momentum through programs that will really add value for them. So this is an analysis we did in collaboration with Washington State that sort of provides, like we like to do a framing analysis that other states can do. In general, this is looking at the programs that students are in different terms. Washington's on a quarter system, so this is looking over 2 years, 8 terms. And as with Michigan and other places, most students, 58%, enter into the general, undeclared, unknown, uncategories. What the hell am I going to do with my life categories? And you can see the progression moving on, but what we see in Washington, as we see everywhere else, is this gray area of students dropping out and not transferring to another institution, so that by the end of the first year in Washington, and this is true everywhere, every state, most every college we've looked, about half of students overall, and the majority of students of color and low-income students, are not in higher education by the start of the second year. So, we have to keep that in mind. We think that there are 2 big reasons for this. Number one, students are sorted out through DevEd, but related to that, they're not helped to find a purpose, and it seems a lot like high school to too many of them, and they're met with discouragement early on. What we'll be looking at is for students who are still enrolled, but this is really important for incoming students, to help them engage with a program and the people within the program, and a good course that's related to their interests from the start, in order to avoid losing students the way we do. So as you see here, in this one we've categorized these by areas. It's not really meta majors, but by sort of SIP areas. What we're recommending is that, and what we did in Washington, was that we categorize programs by their returns. And Washington State, for their workforce programs, had done studies by program to see, using UI wage records, to see what the returns are. And they've divided their workforce programs into low, medium, and high. And, this is based on Washington data. It probably varies throughout Washington. It may be different for Michigan, but what you can do in Michigan and your local colleges is to, look at, divide your programs in these areas, your workforce programs. And for transfer, we distinguish between unstructured programs, which are AA, general studies kind of programs, and structured transfer programs that are sort of pre-majors of the sort you guys have been working with your 4 years to develop. Our research by Rachel Baker and others, suggests that students who are in these structured programs are more likely to complete a bachelor's degree and do so without excess credits than our students in the AA of general swampiness, as I like to call them. And then there are, of course, the undeclared or unknown or uncategorized, which in a lot of colleges include dual enrollment, basic skills, and the like. And what we see is we see when we look at students starting programs and when they complete, and remember the number of completers is a lot less than those who started, we see we see that students in different races sort of start out with similar kinds of aspirations, but you know, they end up in different places. For white students, about 13% are undecided and 20% are in this general AA in Washington. But of those who complete, many are completing with this, you know, the General Associate of Arts, which they call the DTA, the Direct Transfer, but I forget what they call it, DTA. And African American students, a lot of them, 19% are starting out in low workforce, but end up in, you know, even more end up in low return workforce programs. Hispanic students tend to end up disproportionately in low return workforce programs and generic general AA programs, while Asian students are, even though only 7% start in these structured programs, 22% complete in these structured programs, which tend to be in STEM, business, healthcare, and of course, those have the highest returns. So it's obviously this is looking at students at the beginning, at the end. We got to look at students in between. And John Fink and company just did an analysis looking at when these gaps. When students by race start out with similar kinds of aspirations. A lot of African American students, others start in STEM programs, but they switch and drop out, either drop out completely or go to lower return programs. And this was an analysis, I'm not sure what it means, but it looks good, about when that happens. And what they find is that, you know, the sorting occurs throughout, but especially in year one. The promising result is that, that as we know from research CCRC and others have done, that early academic milestones are really important, you know, for predicting longer term success, but they're disproportionately so for Black, Hispanic, and lower income students. And remember, this is looking at students entering and completing high return, high opportunity transfer or workforce programs. And you see the benefits here to students generally of these different KPIs, as Rob called them. But you see even greater returns to additive effects for students of color and low income students, so that you know, in terms of transferring and completing a bachelor's degree, achieving the credit momentum of 12 or more college credits in the first year, you know, is a multiplier of 1.7 for regular students, but for Black and Hispanic students, even more. So the point is, students come in with aspirations, and when they get through the initial barriers, they, you know, the gateways, they do quite well, but not enough get through. So this is why, you know, we're really focused both for experienced colleges, especially given COVID, and those that are just building on this front end connection. As part of the analytics and in the breakout, I'll show you this tool that John Fink developed. It's an Excel tool that can enable you to put your programs just with a simple Excel tool and not much analysis in these different types of programs based on your categorizations of structured and unstructured. So, and then how many are in unknown, undeclared types of programs. And it will also tell you, you know, by race and gender, this is gender, what's the representation of students in different types of programs. Obviously, you see here, nursing is overrepresented with women, by women, you know, and our students disproportionately represented, overrepresented in low return versus high return. Are there certain groups, and how do we deal with that? So I'm going to turn it over to Hannah now to talk about how colleges can think about doing that. Oops.
Okay, thanks, Davis. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how colleges can redesign new student onboarding, because we've really come to think, even before COVID happened, that the onboarding experience was one of the most important parts of the whole student experience that needs to change if you're really going to improve, increase student retention, improve the college experience for students. It's going to be really critical to improve this initial interactions with the college, because we think that this has a really big impact on which programs students end up going into, because this is the whole part of the educating students about what their options are, what programs they might find interesting, how this aligns with their interest. So we developed this packet that came out in May or June, and the first part is kind of our rethinking the student experience from the old model to what does redesigning onboarding look like in the guided pathways model. And then the second part is based on student interviews that were done at St. Petersburg College and Indian River College, both down in Florida. So that packet is really important, because you hear directly from students about what they appreciate about how those colleges have changed the new student experience and what experiences they really valued. And then the third part of the packet is a planning tool, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But you can go to the next slide, Davis. All right, so this slide shows kind of overall the first part of this packet. What are we talking about when we're talking about redesigning onboarding in the guided pathways model? So on the left, we have kind of the old model. On the right, we have the new model. So in the old model, orientation was really focused on onboarding students into college. So just getting them into college, telling them the basics, maybe talking about what it means to be a student, showing them the campus, that sort of thing. But in the guided pathways model, we like to think of orientation as more of an introduction to various fields of study at the college. And this is where things like your meta majors come in really handy, because they're a great way to introduce students to the various fields at the college and how the various programs fit into these broader fields of study. So, so again, it's from moving from just orientation to college to orientation to fields of study. And then moving from optional career and transfer advising and planning to making this a required part of all new students' experience. So not just only something that happens for students who self-identify as being undecided, but something that you're doing for all students. All students are asked what they're interested in, what they might want to do after they finish college, and they're helped to think about their goals and think about their interests and learn more about the programs and the meta majors and courses at the college, and to meet with faculty and maybe to meet with other students and to meet with advisors from the start, to even if they think they know, to confirm what they think they know, and to build an initial educational plan. And then the third point here is about moving from engaging with programs after students complete prerequisites to having them engage with their programs from the start. And what we mean by that is helping students into courses that are part of their program of study, ideally in their very first semester. So oftentimes what happens now, and we've seen this when we do exercises with colleges that ask them to list out the courses that most students take in their first semester. And what we see is that most students take a bunch of dev ed courses in math, English, and reading. They often take a student success course. They often take like a computer course or maybe a speech course or a psychology course, but not really courses that are in the student's program. So even when we look, there's students who are declared as business. A lot of those students are not taking a business program in their first semester. So the idea is here is how can we eliminate a lot of those barriers? And I know you're doing a lot of this work through a lot of the Michigan Dev Ed work, but how can we eliminate those barriers so that they're not slowing students down from engaging with programs? And even if there are some courses that do have some important prerequisites, which I know that there might be other courses that students could take in their field of study to help them learn about that field, to engage with faculty in that field, and to start to see, like, is this something I'm interested in? Because what we've learned from other research is that early major switching is fine. It's the late major switching that's really a killer and really leads to a lot of excess credits. So it's important to help students, first do this initial exploration. Then it's a process of like confirming and reaffirming what the students think they want to do. And then the final point here is moving from this a la carte high school dual enrollment course taking, where students might just be taking courses to fulfill high school requirements or taking the courses that happen to be offered at their high school, and moving towards a model where dual enrollment course taking is more intentional and it's built as an on-ramp into a program pathway, so that the courses students are taking are part of a program of study, which might make them be more inclined to continue that program at the community college after they finish high school. So this is, these are four of the big points that are in this first packet. There's more there and more descriptions. We have the link at the bottom there. But I wanted to give you a couple of examples of how some colleges are redesigning the redesigning onboarding in this model. So if you go to the next slide, this one is from St. Petersburg College down in Florida. And the kind of the lesson learned here and what St. Petersburg College and a number of the other leading colleges have done is that academic and career exploration activities are embedded in both curricular and co-curricular experiences for all entering students, and it extends throughout the first year. So it's not just something that happens at orientation or something that happens in a first year experience course, but it really is something that continues throughout the first year. And these activities are embedded within these meta majors so that students are meeting faculty in these meta majors. They're meeting like people who live in the community who have degrees in these fields or employers in these fields. They're meeting other students, maybe more senior students in these fields, and they're starting to learn more about what the various options in these fields are. So they have these 10 academic and career communities, and throughout the semester, this was last fall in the before times, but they had all these activities throughout the entire semester that were based on the various career communities. And you can see on this, this timeline that we created this timeline based on what was on their websites, but they have these activities and these weeks throughout the semester where they're bringing together people from these communities so that students can learn more about the careers and degrees that are offered in all of the communities at the college. And if you go to their website, you can see a whole list of all these activities that they offer throughout the semester, and they're again offered by career communities. So they have meetings with employers, they have transfer fairs, they have career fairs, they have really a million things going on. And the idea is, again, they're organized by the career communities. And then another main point that I mentioned was helping students take at least one course in their meta major or in their program in their first term. So this is a picture of the degree maps from Indian River State College down in Florida. And you can see when you look at their maps is that in every single map, they have these courses that are kind of these core program courses, and they're included in the student's first semester. So of course, not every student is going to be full-time. Not every student is going to be taking all of these courses in their first term. That's one of the big lessons we learned from mapping, is that no student is actually going to follow these maps, which is why it's super important to use these maps to create educational plans. But as we heard from students in the interviews that we did with them, is that they like seeing these maps. They like seeing the courses that they're going to be taking. And if they're working with an advisor to build their educational plan, they can select certain courses so that they are still taking courses in their program of study in their first term. So on Indian River's maps, they do a great job of including it. You can see on the Criminal Justice AA program, they include Intro to Criminal Justice. On the Marketing Management Associate program, they have social media marketing and introduction to business and principles of marketing. So there actually are a number of courses in their program of study that students are taking in their first semester. And then at Indian River, again, they do a really, really awesome job of rethinking dual enrollment as an on-ramp into students into a program of study at the college. And they have these events called Great Explorations, which is for high school junior and seniors, where they actually bring busloads of students to the campus to meet with faculty, to have some hands-on experience in some of the very, very cool labs that Indian River has at the college. And they work really, really closely with the districts. Davis and John are working on a project with Aspen on dual enrollment right now, and they visited Indian River College. I think it was Davis's last site visit before he's been stuck at home, but they work really, really closely with all their districts, and every student has an educational plan. So these students, while they're in high school, they have an educational plan. They call it their pathway, where they can see the courses they need to take, and it's shows them exactly what they're going to need to do to complete an associate's degree, and then to transfer to UF or FSU or wherever the student wants to go after Indian River. So that's just a couple of examples. And I mentioned before that we had this 3-part packet. So part 1 was kind of the theory, part 2 is the student experience, and then part 3 is this planning exercise, where we provide kind of a template for you to rethink how are you going to redesign the new student experience, new student onboarding, with a focus on helping students explore their interests, explore programs, and get in an initial program of study. How are we going to help students gain experience in these programs from the start? And experience can be taking a course, it can be some sort of service learning. There's a lot of different options. It can be curricular or co-curricular, as St. Petersburg talks about. And then the third part is helping every student develop a educational plan. So in this exercise, it's broken out in those 3 parts. So part 1 is how do we help students explore interest and options? And what we have is we have a box at the top of each one of these that really shows what new students want. What do they appreciate about what the college is doing? So an overview of meta majors and programs, information on career and transfer resources early on. They appreciate an online version of new student orientation that's as engaging as the in-person version of orientation. So opportunities to engage with other incoming and returning students who have similar career and program interests. Interactions with knowledgeable advisors and faculty. So this is exactly what we heard from students, and then we encourage you to think about what are we doing now related to helping students explore their interests and explore their programs? What would be the ideal process that we could do in order to help students get these experiences? And then what do we need to do this at scale? And then part 2 is about helping students gain experiences. So again, we list some of the things that students appreciate and then encourage you to think about how are we going to help students gain these experiences? What is the ideal process? And then how are we going to scale this? And then part 3 is about academic and career planning. So again, what do students appreciate? What are we currently doing now related to academic and career planning? What is the ideal process? And then what do we need to do this at scale? So in the breakout today, we'll talk a little bit more about this, and I can answer any questions about how other colleges are doing it. And then we can talk a little bit about this. This is just the last part of this tool, which encourages you to kind of bring it all together and think about what changes are we going to make? Who's going to be involved in this work? What's the timeline? And then what are the next steps? And then here's just links to the onboarding packet that I was talking about, the data tool that Davis was mentioning, and then we did release a couple of blogs earlier this summer with some kind of cool Tableau tools looking at enrollment trends over time and funding trends over time, and you can filter by state and even by college to look at those trends over time. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Rob and Gretchen.
Thanks, Hannah and Davis. I mean, there's so much great stuff in there. Thank you, as always, for the work that CCRC does. And we are fortunate, as always, to be partners with you. And we come at this in very similar ways with our reflections on the kind of student experience and how to think about colleges transforming that student experience. And what we're going to talk about for the next 25 minutes or so till a break is we had started last time, some of you who are with us, we talked about kind of some key decisions colleges need to make about the student experience that were organized by the Lost Momentum Framework stage. And we did that, I'll get to it in a second. So let's kind of dive in here. Again, much of our work is always on the backs of our partners in consultation with us, and we always want to attribute it first. Our friends at AACC, Gretchen while she was still at AACC, as well as CCRC and SESI and Aspen as well. So we always thank them first. And then introduction, it's in my wall. Kind of guided pathways colleges, and we've talked about this over the last 4 or 5 years about the mission colleges have embarked on. These, I'm going to run through these first slides pretty quickly because we did them last time. But colleges have embarked on the experience, trying to improve the outcomes of students, following the 4 pillars, clarifying the path, help students get on the path, keep students on the path, ensure that they're learning. And we've worked with hundreds between us and Davis and Hannah, literally hundreds of colleges across the country. And we would just share that, you know, there's probably 500 or more colleges who've kind of explored the ideas of guided pathways. Maybe 150 or 200 who've kind of really gone deeper with what we would call design activity around pathways, and maybe 60 to 100 who've rolled out a version 1.0 of pathways, including many Michigan colleges. We will say an observation, and this is not just NCII, but some of our partners, that occasionally this exploration and design activity has in some cases taken the focus off the student experience. And it's ironic that this was all started to kind of figure out what it is about the student experience, to optimize where the challenges were. And the reason for this, I think, is because we've turned inward and looked at us a lot and what we do, rather than the effect of what we do on the student experience. And I think the 2 quick stories I always tell on this is, you know, if you go to a college who's rolled out their program maps and you ask the provost at that college, this is now a composite story of multiple colleges. We did this with some of the colleges who went earlier, and college would have rolled out version 1.0 in fall 18. We were there in spring 19. We'd ask, all right, so you rolled out your maps last fall. What percentage of your students now have a customized, who started last fall, customized full program education plan based on those maps? Hannah's already smiling, because the most common answer to that question is actually, I don't know. I have no idea how many students have a customized full program ed plan. That's already a problem. And if you press, and some people guess because a lot of them don't actually know, you get an answer that's sometimes down 15, 20%, which then begs the question, why did you go through all this work mapping when it doesn't matter to the student until it is translated into a customized program plan? That, by the way, is not to say those colleges did something wrong, but it's the translation of their internal work into what actually happens in the student experience that may be a gap.
The third most common answer is our technology won't do it. And so I think that we're waiting for the technology in order for our students to have educational plans. So we just put them on the website response that we all have to, Hannah's laughing again, is that we have to power through the transition to from maps to plans and the over-reliance on technology in order to have those plans be something that is a breathing, living document for the students.
And the other thing is, I don't know if Hannah was going through it really quickly. When you guys unpack that more, a lot of the things that Hannah will share and Ceci will share that they've learned from students, very rarely do they say, you know what, I really like this piece of technology. That is very rare, right? Now, students do want some technology to work with them, but a lot of this is about people and processes and the processes and how that translates in the student experience. The meta majors thing can be even more of a challenge to translate in the student experience. When you ask the question, what of the students who, like, let's say, came to your college this fall when you had meta majors, what percentage of those, like, what was the difference between the students who came this fall when you had meta majors, maybe versus last fall when you didn't, in their student experience? And again, at a bunch of colleges, and Hannah shared 2 of them with you, there are great answers to this question. I mean, the St. Petersburg calendar of the things they do over an entire semester, 45 events that are customized by meta major. that is obviously a very, very different than what they did the year before, most likely. But at a lot of colleges, the unfortunate answer to that question, at least in year one of implementing pathways, is, well, we had students pick a meta major. So what? Like, now you have students pick a meta major. What does it actually matter, right? Until it's translated into how do we build community and relationships and social capital and customized experiences, so students can actually have that, like, that base to kind of make decisions on, but also have relationship capital with people at your college. And again, that's not to say the colleges we talked to had done bad work, but what they had done is worked on their internal structures and their kind of internal looking things, and maybe a little less on what does this actually mean for the student experience. So about a year ago, actually, yeah, about a little over a year ago, CCRC and NCII kind of started thinking about these issues and how could we share some brief things with the field. We talked about one last time. What are some of the key decisions you have to make about the student experience? And again, you know, it's things like, for example, I'm just going to use one, career exploration. We all say students need to explore careers more intentionally. All right, that's a clear statement that we're making. So now what? How do we actually help students do that at scale? I mean, one answer can be on the spectrum to, we're going to have a mandatory 3-unit course that is primarily focused on matching interest to programs to careers. Another answer is we have a link to Career Coach on our website, right? There's a lot of room in between those two, and we hope that colleges are more intentional about this. We mentioned last time our friends at Lake Michigan are trying an interesting non-mandatory, non-credit version of a course. But again, that idea of you have to make decisions about the student experience. The documents Hannah shared with you and Davis shared with you, how to rethink onboarding, like, you know, asking you to look at what you do now, what would you like to do, and how would you get there? Those are decisions you're making about the student experience. At NCII, we talk a lot about having you think of yourselves as designers of the student experience and creating design teams that are not about what do we do internally, but are actually about designing the student experience. And so we talked last time about our Guided Pathways resource document number 4, which was a list of those decisions. So the second question that comes, of course, when you start refocusing on the student experience is, how do you know it's actually changed, right? So how do we know this is having any effect on students? The metrics, look, the momentum metrics, and I have this on another slide, that CCRC has kind of coalesced and how predictive they are. I mean, that amazing slide that they're showing. The momentum metrics are absolutely one measure of the effect of your Guided Pathways efforts. Interestingly, they're still a little bit summative of the actual student experience. They're telling you what the student experience produces, right? I've succeeded in transfer level math and English in my first year. I've achieved 12 or more transferable units. Those are very important signposts, but we maybe can even go a little deeper and more granular about what things that are actually in the student experience that might produce those outcomes. And so when we had this discussion, I remember this last summer, right about this time, we were debating, should we only have quantitative measures? Should we have qualitative measures? Some of the qualitative measures we suggested are somewhat hard to measure. We know this, and we actually think we're not suggesting you go tomorrow and implement this measurement paradigm for this list. But we do think it's important to call out that some of the things like, for example, you'll see in a second, how confident do students feel about their program choice at the end of the first semester? That's probably a pretty predictive data point, right? Because it's telling you how students feel, right? If they were a Pell student, they had to choose something. But how are they feeling about that now? Do they feel like they have the resources necessary? So we'll talk about that list and some others. Okay. And so, again, I mentioned this, that the momentum metrics at the AACC and CC are critically important. They're complemented by these questions. And finally, as we talk about equity, and those of you, we'll drop a link into the chat here, but we're doing our first kind of leadership for equity panel tomorrow based on the equity guides we released back in April and re-released in July. That we strongly suggest disaggregating this data on the student experience and helping us understand the student experience of first-time in college students and students of color. And one point that comes out of one of the guides that Tia McNair makes in guide number 10, if you have a chance to look at them, is that we have to stop making the lived experience of white students the benchmark against we measure the experience of African-American, Latinx, and Southeast Asian students and indigenous peoples. That we actually have to understand the student experience and validate it of all of our students, but focusing in on those who have historically been marginalized and not had success in the system. One point here that we've made for a long time, disaggregating data does not ensure equity, right? disaggregating data tells you what is. This is the classic "the data will set you free" argument that I've been dealing with for 25 years since I worked in industry, right? The data measures what is, right? You can have some predictive data. CCRC has done a good job. It might suggest what might be if you change something. But when you disaggregate data, it's just telling you where the challenges are. And we would also point out that the data does not help particularly tell you what to do about it. And that's where a lot of the research that CCRC and others around the guided pathways world have given us some clues about what to do about it. And we also listen to students on this. And so it is a necessary step, however, to understand how the students experience the college in different ways. So we're not saying don't disaggregate your data, but what we are saying is don't stop there, right? You don't have a chance to, you need to kind of follow on with that by further unpacking it, creating meaning. And again, the other thing is like, right, measuring data doesn't change it, right? You actually have to fundamentally change things at scale to have an effect on that data, right? This is, I think, where our problems have been for much of the last 20 years, up until some colleges have really moved the needle recently, is we were really good at changing things on the margins, right? We would change really big things for small numbers of students or really tiny things for at scale and wonder why the outcomes didn't get better. Well, most of our colleges didn't actually try to improve the outcomes, right? Because you didn't try to do big things at scale, which is what it's going to take to actually move the needle on some of these measures and reduce these, what we used to call achievement gaps that are really kind of equity gaps, or as Gloria Latson-Billings says, the educational debt the system has accrued to allow the outcomes to be this way. So we're kind of getting down into some of these decisions. So what we did is we used the loss momentum framework. We kind of crowdsourced some of these student experience questions with CCRC and AACC and Aspen and CESI and folks like Ed Bowling and Chris Baldwin. And Ed Bowling, our friend from North Carolina, who is the guided pathways coach on AACCs in Texas, California. He's on my team in NCII. I don't know what he does for his day job, but he does a lot of guided pathways coaching with us. He talks about the two frameworks. We started with the lost momentum framework and completion by design. And that was really focused in on the student experience. It talked about what are the loss points that students experience, what are the momentum points that can help move them forward. And then we coalesced things into the 4 pillars because Davis and Hannah, actually Hannah wasn't there yet, it was Davis and Gretchen and I and some others were kind of around as things started coming out of CBD. College started asking, well, what do we do about the student experience? And that's really where the 4 pillars came from. And these frameworks are very complementary. Ed talks about the lost momentum framework when you're really focused on the student experience is a great way to look at and capture that experience. And the 4 pillars is a great way to think about how do we organize our response to it. Colleges have used one of them, both of them. It doesn't particularly matter. What we're saying in these guides and in this conversation is what really matters is are the changes actually being experienced by your students on the ground. And so we've organized them by the lost momentum framework, but you could easily organize them by the 4 pillars. Okay, and we're not gonna, we have about 10 minutes or so we're not gonna kind of spend a lot of time on these. We'll explore them more in breakout. So Gretchen and I will just pop back and forth on these slides and the research questions. Some quantitative questions at connection. Things like, what percentage of students complete the application at our college but never enroll? This is a fascinating number if you haven't measured it. It is as high as 50% at some colleges. My observation on this is I love community colleges. We both devote our lives to them. But I will tell you what is not happening is someone has applied to Lake Michigan, Oberlin, Yale, and Middlebury. And at the last minute, they picked Middlebury over Lake Michigan. If someone has applied to Lake Michigan, they are probably going to Lake Michigan or they're not going anywhere. And the research shows if you track students who are in that, sometimes it's called summer melt, but they apply and don't enroll and ask the question, how many of them are enrolled somewhere else? A significantly large percentage of them are not enrolled anywhere else, right? And by the way, that's disproportionately true for students of color, right? So there is something in our onboarding process and the CCRC's focus on will help us take a look at. But we want to know, all right, so they filled out an application for a reason, right? And they're not showing up first day of classes. There's a sign that the student experience may not be optimal.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more colleges that are actually actively outreaching to these students and trying to collect these students that don't enroll and ask questions about why and do make concerted efforts to circle back and bring them in and recapture that population of students. So I think it is also how we use our recruiting and outreach resources, and in rethinking how we use those in a way that has a greater return on investment than historically we have been using them. The percentage of students that complete a FAFSA, that still is an underwhelming number for the amount of student need that we have at our community colleges. And so how do we help students complete the FAFSA on entry? And then how do we match that with more holistic student supports and intake questions about more global questions about student need? And what percentages of students are meeting with an advisor prior to enrolling for classes? And that doesn't always have to be a one-on-one meeting. And how, we talk about how to increase advising capacity and not increase the number of advisors. Melinda Karp, who worked a long time with CCRC with Davis and Hannah and others, and is now runs Phase 2 Consulting, just did a virtual site visit for me for a college in Washington this week, and is talking, helping colleges think about how to do this in a virtual setting more effectively. The colleges had been very resistant in many places in doing virtual meetings with advisors with students, and how to use technology most effectively to support students through advising and more holistic student supports. Well, now we're in a situation where we have no choice but to do that. So colleges are becoming more creative about how to use virtual settings to advise students and create that personal connection with students just out of necessity. So how do we refine that and scale that? Things that we did to respond to the acute COVID crisis that we didn't do before, how do we really look at that and take the best of that and institutionalize it moving forward to increase our capacity?
Yeah, and on the second one, on the FAFSA, I mean, clearly the My Best work that Erica was talking about earlier is talking about a more holistic overall approach to kind of student financial stability. It's not just about the FAFSA, but that is a metric you can measure relatively easily as well. And this advisor one, by the way, there are some of you that require this. And the colleges that require meeting with an advisor may wonder why this question is here, but I will tell you that at a lot of colleges, this number is very low. The percentage of students that actually meet with an advisor prior to enrolling for classes. And you start tracking, I would love to track the first semester success rate of those who have met versus those who haven't. So these are the types of things that we're trying to help, the notion of analyzing how big of a predictor some of these are. CCRC's done the really hard work of analyzing it for the momentum metrics. We think there's an amazing opportunity to measure some of these more experiential things and their predictive ability. I mean, I think back to, we're going to talk qualitative in a second. I'll save the story for there. But here, some more quantitative questions. Who's entered your portal, right? The learning management system and the student portal is so important. Students tell you this all the time. You tell me this portal, I get no information on it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Who's actually entered it by the first day of classes, right? What percentage of students have actually not even gotten into the portal yet by the first day of classes, and are they already behind? And how do we, again, the idea here is how do we fix our approach to make sure that this experience is happening? How many students have meaningfully explored careers and connected them pros in college by the first day of classes by the end of the first term? I mean, matching it to choices students are making. Students are choosing a meta major. So there's one level you need to at least choose a meta major. Maybe that's a more basic level, but by the end of the first term, certainly we want students to have connected that, done that career exploration. A couple qualitative ones really quickly. On the financial stability front, how accurate of a picture do students have of how much it will cost, how long it will take to complete their program, and how confident are that they can handle the financial commitment to complete their certificate degree transfer. I mean, I love these questions we have around confidence and motivation around these things, because we've seen really strong data out of Tennessee on these non-cognitive factors about hope and motivation and confidence. Out of California, Chaffey College has for years given a 7-item hope questionnaire as part of their application. And they find that the response students have in those set of items generally about hope about their lives is far more predictive of their outcomes than anything else they do, right? So these non-cognitive things and these qualitative measures could be even more predictive in some cases than some of the quantitative measures. And we hesitate sometimes because they're hard to collect, but I think there are many ways we could go about doing that. All right, so some at the entry stage, and by the way, these stages kind of are a little fused on the margins, so some of these may overlap. some quantitative ones. What percentage of students made an informed choice about program of study by the end of the first term? What percentage of students have met with an advisor and have on file an individualized full program plan by the start of their second term? This, I may say, the end of their second term. This one is a momentum metric, the third one here, about completing college level math and English, partially because it's so predictive, but that still is a student experience question. Any thoughts on these?
No.
Yeah, okay. Who takes 3 program courses from a meta major or a focus area in their first year? When Davis and Hannah talk about that, what about that awesome class in the first term? So you could even take this down to the first term. This final quantitative one here is really interesting. What percentage of students enroll in classes and have completed 0 units by the end of the first term?
This, Erica, are you talking? Oh.
Erica's talking offline, I think.
Oh, okay. So this percentage of students that enroll in classes and completed 0 units, I had my commission members in my commission at AACC do this in their institutions. It is an exercise just to check. And there was an institution in Texas that I will not name the institution, where the president called me up afterwards and said that he will use this this exercise is an example in every single onboarding, like first year, like convocation event that he does until the number changes. The number at his campus of a multi-campus institution, this number was 58% of their students had 0 units at the end of their first term. He said it floored the entire institution. The number is going to be much higher than you think it is. And then you have to start unpacking the questions of why and how we make changes. But it really changed the dynamic of conversation in my commission meeting for 18 months afterwards, because the president started to really dig deep on this number.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of colleges, when they measure this, find the numbers between 15 and 30%. I'd say that's a more typical response. I mean, I also think that you're going to find those small rural colleges in Michigan, this number tends to be closer to 15 because your students tend to be a little stickier there. But it's still a number to take a look at and to think about what's leading to that and what you might do about that afterwards.
Yeah, because it's the DevEd issue. So if they take all DevEd in 2 program classes or 1 program class and they're all non-credit and they withdraw from the program classes, it's 0 units when it's done. And so I think as we look at DevEd differently, that these numbers will change as well, and that we do away with DevEd and have the accelerated co-requisite model. But this number still is indicative of how our students are experiencing their first semester with us.
Yeah, and we could do some exploring in the breakout of that, because I think there's some other things around DevEd that are going on there too that are affecting this number. But to kind of move, we're going to move through these rest of these pretty quickly and talk about them more in the breakout. But some qualitative questions. How confident are students they're making progress toward their goals at the end of the first semester? This last question here is one that research on equity tells us is incredibly important for students of color and low-income students. What levels of engagement and connectedness do students feel after their first 4 weeks of college? And we called out how big of a deal this is for students of color, especially for Black and Latinx students. That engagement and connectedness and relationship capital and social capital, sense of belonging, validation, all of these things are amazingly critical. And in a lot of the research tells us if they don't have it in their first 4 weeks, they are highly unlikely to get it later, and they're at significant risk for leaving the institution. So we're coming up on a break. We've been going for about an hour and 20. So I will just run through these really quickly. We have a breakout. You can come explore more. Some quantitative questions at the progress completion stage. Who's meeting with an advisor in their 3rd and 4th term? What percentage of students change their program after the 3rd term? Going to Rahana's point from earlier, which we've said for years. Changing your program in your first term, not a huge problem. Second term, not a big problem. You start having it happen after the 3rd term and look at time to degree and overall number of units. And this is not to say that people aren't going to change their minds. Like, part of the goal of your meta major approach should be to help them change their minds earlier if they're going to change it, because they're actually getting the experiences that Hannah and Davis are talking about, to have done some of this exploration, to have figured out, for example, I thought I wanted to be a nurse because everyone told me it was the good job, but I don't like people or blood. right? I need to be doing something different. Like, you don't want to find that out in the 8th semester. You want to find that out earlier. And then this notion of high impact practices, Hannah and Davis talked about this as well. Who's getting these applied learning experience? Our friends at AAC and you, again, Tia McNair and her colleagues, and Ceci, when you analyze who's getting the high impact practices, it tends to be the dominant students with higher income and white students who are getting these high impact practices, and the students who aren't getting it are the ones who need them the most, students of color and low income students. Other qualitative measures here: do students feel the courses they're taking are relevant? Right? This question about relevance and the GE and math and English courses, this is not to say that GE and math and English courses can't be made to be relevant, but it doesn't happen by osmosis or hope, right? We actually have to do some design to explain to students, all right, here's why you're taking math. And by the way, it's a lot easier to do that when you're talking to a humanities student and you're talking to them about quantitative reasoning rather than algebra. If I'm a humanities student, I'm not thinking, there's very little reason I'm going to ever use the algebra. There's a lot of reasons I'll use quantitative reasoning in life, or statistics for the social sciences. Do students share that the college offers, this is a scheduling question. You want to talk student experience for a question. You want to ask a really big question that'll let you learn about your programs. Can students do they know what programs they need and courses they need? But even if they knew what courses they need, do you offer them at times they can take them with the other courses they need? Right? You're not going to solve that scheduling problem 100%. But we want to get a little better than we have been historically. And then the last stage, some of the advancement stages. What's the breakdown? And we talked about this, some of the tools that Hannah and John Fink and Davis have put out on the demographic breakdown of graduates, who's getting high wage jobs, who's getting low wage jobs. What's the average number of units taken by last year's graduates disaggregated by program and race ethnicity? And then this one's a little harder, but how many units are being applied to junior standard in a major at your student's transfer destination? Yeah, it may be a little harder to get that data, but it's very important. Nothing will piss off your former students more than learning they got 2 semesters to repeat after they hit this thing that you called a success, which they may not think has been all that successful anymore when they're repeating all these courses. A couple of qualitative questions: how confident are students that they understand the connection between their program at the college and their eventual career? And how confident for those who are going directly into the workforce, how confident do they have the skills they need, the 21st century professional skills, as Diego Navarro and friends would call them, to actually succeed in the workplace? And so again, just real quickly, you can find out more about all of this at our website, and the guides are on our website. We'll talk about them more in the breakout, but the bottom line and what connects what Davis and Hannah were talking about is we want to make sure that in the work that we're doing, the good work that you're doing in Michigan at your colleges and collectively, that we don't lose that it really has to translate into the student experience actually changing. That onboarding tool from CCRC is trying to do this. We're trying to do this. I think Ceci has always tried to do this to make sure that that student experience is at the heart of the work. So any final thoughts? We are into a break here, so I will hand it back to Erica. We know this is a lot over an hour and a half with all of us talking, and we'll give you a chance to talk in the breakout sessions that are coming up soon. So Erica or Jenny, back to you. I think it's back to you. Lord
While
knows
I'm waiting for them, I'm going to make another plug for Twitter, because now I'm getting creepy and I'm going through our participant list and I'm looking for all of you on Twitter. So if I've requested to follow you, please follow me back. Thank you very much.
You're right. That was creepy, Katie.
I
Thank you.
know.
That's good.
I'm here for all of you to make sure you're all still awake and wondering if I am actually as creepy as I sound.
Now you're the stalker in chief, not the tweeter in chief. Sorry.
Perfect. Even better. I'll update my resume.
Okay. Thank you guys. Oh my God. Fantastic. I am so excited, and I don't know how you all are going to choose which of the breakouts you're going to attend, and we should make the meeting 3 times as long so that everyone can be at all of them. So here's how this is going to work. We're a little behind schedule. I still want to give you a 10-minute break. You can choose a breakout, one breakout, and they are numbered 1, 2, and 3. So in number 1, you will be with Rob and Gretchen. Number 2, you will be with Davis, and number 3, you will be with Hannah. Remember those numbers. Go to your participants list. Remember, when we renamed ourselves, we're going to rename ourselves again and add the number for the breakout. It says first breakout, but it is the only breakout that you will be attending today. So rename yourself, choose your breakout. There you go. I see some people are already doing it. Fantastic. So now we're going to have, it's actually going to be a 10-minute break. But don't go to do whatever you're going to do. Get your coffee, check your email, turn the channel for your kids until you have chosen your breakout session. If you feel like it, share a song in the chat. I've been having fun making playlists this summer with favorite songs from this group. What's keeping you on your pathway these days? Check out our tweets from the Stalker Tweeter in Chief. And we will, at the end of the 5-minute, at the end of the breakout sessions, we'll have another 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and debrief some highlights from those sessions and talk about the next steps after this meeting. So,
Jenny, would you list those again, please?
Group 1 will be with Rob and Gretchen. Group 2 will be with Davis, and Group 3 will be with Hannah.
The topics, though?
Well, they're on your agenda. Hang on. They are
I just put them in the chat.
In Group 1? Did you put them in the chat? Thanks.
Yep.
Program equity and program number 2 and program onboarding number 3.
Things a little bit different on your phone. It's not as clear.
Sorry.
I'll figure it out.
Okay. I will be frantically assigning breakout rooms while you're all on break.
Tell Mama I'm on a Zoom. Tell Mama I'm on a Zoom.
Hey, Jenny.
Yes.
What time are we back?
So,
I know we said 10 minutes, but I didn't look at the time.
it was 10:25, so
Okay.
10:35.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hey, Jenny, this is Erica. I haven't been sent to a room yet.
I know, because you didn't
Okay,
pick one. Hang on.
just want to make sure.
Do you want to go to Davis?
Wherever you need me to go. Just, I don't want to overlap. If Katie's doing one, I'll do a different one.
See what Katie's doing.
I think Katie's doing two.
And Jenny,
Yeah.
okay, and Jenny, my internet was unstable. It went out, it came back in, and I'm still in with you as well.
Okay, I'll assign you somewhere. Hang on. Okay, Erica, Katie is in room 2, so I'm going to send you to room 3.
Terrific, thank you.
Bev, I'm going to need you to come out and go in again because I don't have you to assign.
Really? Oh, I'm right there with the 3 in front of me. Hold on. You don't see me, you said?
I don't see you. Well, I would have sent you to 3. But I don't see you as unassigned. Okay, so unjoin and join again if you would. That would make it easier.
All right.
Oh wait, it says okay, yeah, good. There we go. Terry, I didn't get you. Oh wait, let's see if I can do it. Okay, Terry, are you there? No. Resume recording. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. This will, each room, the facilitators in each room and the mentors in each room, I would encourage you to go ahead and share some key insights or takeaways from your conversation. Can we begin with room 1?
Well, okay then. I came back at exactly the right time. Yeah, we had a small but mighty group. We had some interesting conversations about, we were kind of really focusing in on thinking about the student experience and what's affecting it right now. And, you know, obviously the pandemic has been the dominant conversation there. And so one of the things we talked about, I mean, Nathan can go into this a little more as our mentor, but this, how do you build this sense of community in the student experience in a remote environment? We've had a number of people talked about this. We shared some resources from the National Pathways, pathwaysresources.org has some good webinars on this front. We talked about that a little bit. We We also talked a little bit about the effects of online pedagogy, or maybe a lack of good online pedagogy, on the student experience. Dawn sharing with us that she happened to talk to 10 college students over the weekend from various places in Michigan, and independently, all of them were waiting to see how much of the instruction was going to be online, because some of their experiences were so negative with classes that were converted. Like the faculty who taught online were fine. And this is just the reality we all dealt with as people who had resisted online for, in some cases, for 20 or 30 years, were thrown online. That the student experience in those courses may not have been optimal. I'm sure some people did a great job, but that is affecting, apparently, from these stories, enough that students are considering not coming for a semester until things are back because of that experience they had in online classrooms. So as we've noted a number of times in the Guided Pathways movement, that the student experience around the classroom is very important, but their experience in the classroom is maybe underappreciated even more than we thought it was. And so I thought that was a really interesting insight about the potential effects of that on enrollment. It calls out, Gretchen shared a bunch of the work that Scottsdale's been doing in Arizona on really trying to ramp up the online pedagogy and instructional technology support for faculty. I mean, to be fair to faculty, this happened very quickly. And hopefully with some of the time between the end of the semester and the fall, those of you who are going to share some resources, we see Erica dropping some resources in there. And then talked a little bit about the effect of some of this on rural colleges. And Gretchen was sharing that at NCII, we are about to, hopefully, fingers crossed, kick off a project that's going to focus on the experience of rural colleges post-pandemic and with Guided Pathways across the country. This would include maybe a year where we have a learning community, and then some years after that for more cohort-based Guided Pathways type approaches. And then during that, we would be sharing some what we're learning about rural colleges specifically. So I think that was the net of our conversation about the student experience. Oh, and also Randall sharing with us that at Macomb, focusing really even in on understanding the student experience in a different way through some survey tools, and trying to design at the student experience level, which we at NCII were really happy to hear, because that's one of the things we are continuing to evolve more towards. So that would be the quick update from group number 1.
Nathan, did you want to share some more takeaways? Anybody have any questions for group 1, or anything that this debrief sparked for you if you were not part of this group?
No, I don't have anything else. Rob summed it up pretty good. That was everything we talked about in a short sound bite. So that was good.
Great. Okay, let's, I see Paige has put some comments on group 2 in the chat. Paige, did you want to share some of that verbally? Do people have questions about what happened in group 2?
The only thing I'll share, and I said,
sorry.
Oh, we did this before, Paige. Sorry, I keep talking over you. I put this on Twitter. This is another plug from the tweeter in chief. But Mara made a comment that was really just, I don't know, it brought it all together for me, as we all talked about how equity has become so central to what we're doing. And she said that basically it's been amazing to see in this time everybody just fall in line behind that, and everybody can stand up and get behind equity as central underscoring value for our work in the current time, but also moving forward. So I just loved that. And now I'll let you talk, Paige. Sorry.
Didn't have anything else to add. Perfect, Katie. I didn't know if Davis, he did a great job in leading the group. I didn't know if you had any other insights that you took away.
Well, I liked your point, Paige, about how this situation, I think it's made us all more empathetic, including faculty thinking about the circumstances students are facing in a way maybe they don't, and we don't, because we don't live that kind of experience. I think it was pretty much agreed that this is a silver lining of this crisis. can really help us focus. I believe the community colleges are so much better able to deal with this. I mean, A, because you guys, work 24/7 for no money, but B, because you believe that your students can learn and that can be successful. You just got to break down those barriers. So I think that's the community college secret weapon. Now, you're still going to work 24/7 and make no money, but, I'm just humbled and proud of the work you guys do. And I think this is why community colleges will not only survive, but thrive in this work. We talked about reaching out to high schools and even students in middle schools, building these pathways down into the high schools. We're coming out with a report with Aspen on partnerships of high schools and community colleges, both urban schools, small town and rural colleges that are working with their high schools and that have good outcomes for students of color and also low-income students, and how they're approaching this and doing it at scale. Russell mentioned that, trios with Upward Bound, and Helen Church has always done a good job, but that's, resource intensive. But how they're managing, even with low resources, to partner with their local districts and schools to make a win-win for this, because the schools, as hard as we have it, the schools maybe have it even harder, and the most disadvantaged schools, which serve the poorest kids and have the least resources, really, when we find that when colleges reach out to them, they're very responsive. The suburban schools, they're going to do what they do, which is fine. But so again, here's an opportunity to get more students with bachelor's degrees, hopefully more Michigan Community College bachelor's degrees, as well as Michigan University bachelor's degrees, as well as Associates of Applied Science and good workforce degrees out, 3 to 5 years from now, when hopefully, we're going to be on an upswing economically and demographically and socially, So thanks for what you do, and thanks for Paige for basically summarizing in a haiku what I thought was a rich discussion. Anyone else welcome to weigh in?
Remaining questions or thoughts from group 2? Thank you. All right, I'll turn to group 3.
All right, so we talked about a number of different topics. We talked about how do you try to avoid that, like how can you help students through the enrollment matriculation process so that you're not losing like 50% of your students before the semester even starts from application. So how can you kind of track students? I think part of it is first like identifying what all the steps are, and then you can start tracking students through those steps. And as soon as you can like assign students to an advisor or an enrollment specialist that's in their meta major, we've seen we've heard some good stories from colleges that are better able to kind of keep track of students and help them through that process. If they're assigned to someone in their initial field of interest as early as possible. We talked about how do you, like if you're doing onboarding and you want to engage students and create the sense of belonging and purpose and connect them with people at the college, like how do you do that when we're online? So how do you take some really cool events that colleges have developed over the last couple of years and still try to foster this sense of community and when no one is actually on campus anymore. So a couple of people shared ideas of doing Facebook Live events with like the chancellor or with counselors and other people at the college where people can just join these and ask questions and hear from other folks at the college. We talked about how concerned students, and this gets to I think something Rob and Rob mentioned, is that concerned students have about remote classes in the fall, and how can you, like, are there ways that you can share more with students about what courses will be like when they are online, so that it's not this big unknown, but like if they're new to the college, how can you tell them what this experience is going to be like, or give them a sample of what a course is going to be like, or, you know, introduce them to other people, or help them make connections with other students early, so that it's not this big unknown scary thing, but it's more familiar from the start. And then we talked about at the end how important, like even more important, faculty might be in like creating the sense of belonging early on, because they're going to be the ones who are like seeing, like if we do have more synchronous courses in the fall, they're going to be seeing students online. So how can we build some of these early engagement and belonging activities, creating the sense of community in some of these courses as well, and how can we engage faculty in this work to build this into their courses. So some of the things we talked about, I don't know if Erica or Lindsay was also in our group, if they have any other thoughts.
Great summary, Hannah.
Under thoughts or questions for group 3? Sounds like 3 really fantastic conversations. And so thank you all who contributed to the conversations, and thanks facilitators and mentors and everyone for those report outs. So now we're kind of into the home stretch of the meeting. And so it's time to talk about what's next for this group. What's next for Guided Pathways in Michigan? And I hear you all thinking, wait, I thought we were all done with Guided Pathways. It's 2020. Guided Pathways, the Guided Pathways Institute is over. This is Institute 6. Nope. Just nope. I have some cute animations on this slide, but it's so much easier to run from this view that I didn't do it. So no, we're not done with Guided Pathways. Guided Pathways is not over in Michigan. We have in many ways only just begun, as I think this meeting has kind of brought home to us and a lot of this conversation. So remember that slide at the beginning that had all of our initiatives on it? I wanted to use this slide to highlight that all of these initiatives line up under, and I didn't use the lost momentum framework that we've been talking about today, but I used the categories of the SOA, the Scale of Adoption Assessment, because we have focused so much on that. But you can see that all of the things that we're doing at the center line up under one of or more of these things. So when you are working on the right math at the right time, you are also working on pathways. You are working on ensuring students are learning as we work on getting courses aligned with the same learning outcomes. In My Start to Finish, as we accelerate and make developmental education work better, we're getting students on the path. My Best helps to keep students on the path. And then these initiatives underneath here, our work on the mentoring program, our Twitter, and our voluntary framework of accountability partnership kind of help. These are all like things that support all of these areas. So I just wanted to share that with all of you, and that this is kind of an organizing principle for our work going forward. So although the official Guided Pathways Institute is closing at this moment, the work on Guided Pathways in Michigan is not over. And one of the ways that we're kind of keeping this work cohesive is through these scale of adoption assessments. We're creating a lot of and adopting a lot of scale of adoption. I see Hannah laughing at my Oprah meme. Every initiative, or most of our initiatives now, have their own scale of adoption assessments. So we've got the traditional Guided Pathways SOA. We've got the developmental education SOA that a number of your colleges are working on completing or have completed. And we also have the financial stability SOA for the My Best colleges. So, and you know, you never know, there's might be going to be a SOA for transfer pathways at some point. So just wanted to keep in mind, so all of those kind of additional SOAs build off of the kind of the big comprehensive SOA and represent kind of dives into some of the practices from that work. So the next thing, so one of the big things that's next for us as a state is we're going to launch the next iteration of our scale of adoption assessment. And we have a new SOA for 2020, and Hannah, who is one of the principal authors on that SOA, is here to talk to us about what's different. What will you see on 2020 in 2020 that's different?
All right, thanks, Jenny. All right, so we did revise the scale of adoption assessment a little bit. We tend to update it every year or so. And based on like what we've learned and how we're thinking about pathways. So in the new version of the scale of adoption, you'll see there are 4 new practices. And there is one in Area 1 that's about meta majors and asking whether your programs are organized and marketed in broad career-focused academic and career communities or meta majors. No, very, very few colleges actually call them meta majors. It sounds like a very consultant-y term, I think, but you know, career and academic communities, fields of interest, schools. So this was kind of it's part of guided pathways, and as we talked about in the onboarding group today, you know, they're really important for helping to structure some of these experiences, and they tend to be, you know, important student-facing structures that colleges are developing as part of their pathways work. And it was sort of like implicit in some of the earlier practices, but we just decided to include it in the next version. So you'll see a practice about that. We also moved the practice on math pathways from Area 2 to Area 1, because in thinking about math pathways, we realized that it's a really important part of like the mapping process when you're thinking about like what is a program and what are the courses in this program and what is it the students are going to learn in this program. Which math course they're going to take is a really important discussion. So we moved it up to Area 1, but it's still the same practice. And then in Area 2, helping students choose and enter a path, we added 2 practices on helping students into and through program relevant gateway math and English courses by the end of the first year. So this closely relates to the KPIs that you're looking at and just this idea of removing some of these developmental education barriers that are keeping students out of program courses and from advancing in their field. So we added 2 practices about that. And then Area 3, keeping students on the path, all those practices are the same. In Area 4, we added 1 practice. It's about instruction across programs of study, and it's about engaging students in active and applied learning, encouraging them to think critically, solve meaningful problems, work and communicate effectively with others. So we added a practice on that. So you'll see that one as well. So those are the main changes to the practices. You'll also see what we're calling equity considerations in the scale of adoption assessment. What we did was we added a bunch of questions at the top of each area. So for Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, and 4. We added a bunch of questions that are designed to help colleges think about and articulate the connections between the college's pathways work and your equity goals. So we included the questions kind of before the main practices in the SOA, so that these would kind of be at top of mind as you're thinking about redesigning onboarding and building plans or thinking about advising. So what some colleges do is they actually just answer the equity considerations in the boxes where we ask the questions. Some colleges add them in like their progress to date or next step columns. It's really up to you. But the idea is that these questions are supposed to help guide your conversations as you're thinking about what is it we're doing, and are we designing these practices? Are we really foregrounding equity in the redesign of these practices? So those are the main like structural changes to the SOAA. Again, we did design this initially as like a planning document, a way for colleges to understand all the different parts of the scale of adoption assessment. What I would probably do is go back to the one that you had last time you completed this. Think about what's changed. Obviously, a lot has changed in the world since then, but in terms of like your practices, you know, where have you made progress? What things did you think you were going to do that maybe you didn't do, or what things did you think you were going to do that you've changed, or what have been your major accomplishments in the last year or two since you last completed the scale of adoption assessment? And we do think it's really important to bring together a pretty diverse group from the college, from various departments, divisions, different levels of the organization to complete the assessment. So you're getting all these different perspectives, because if it's just one person at the college filling it out, it's not going to be, then it's not really a planning document. And it's also not going to probably be a good reflection of like what people think is happening and how scaled these practices are, and whether there's a broad understanding of what the college is doing and why, and what problems these practices are designed to address, and how well they're going, and what further changes you're going to want to make. So at the top of the scale of adoption, we do include like a list of who should be included in these discussions. And as you're putting together this team, you know, we'd encourage you to ask yourselves, like, who has not to this point been involved in these discussions, and who should be included that hasn't been included so far, to bring in new voices, to bring in new ideas, and just to make sure that you're getting the full picture on how well how this is going at the college. So I think those are most of my points. I don't know, Jenny, if you have any questions or comments.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to give everybody an opportunity, since we have Hannah with us, this is your chance to ask anything that's been unclear or that you are wondering about the scale of adoption assessment. Feel free to speak up, unmute yourself, drop the question in the chat, raise your hand. I hope that you all are have found this to be a good exercise in terms of bringing people together and discussing, and then the follow-up interviews. I know that we found them to be it's been a fantastic experience for us at the center to get a chance to talk to you in this kind of detailed way. So timeline. Oh, here's a question, wait. Yeah, okay, so thank Mara, you never mind. Yeah. So we're gonna be, I'm gonna be emailing it out to you this afternoon. If you are the lead, you will receive it. We will also get it posted on our website, and I'll tell you where that's gonna be when I send the email. And you will have until Friday, September 25th to return it. So hopefully that gives people enough time to work through this in small bites. It's really a couple of months. And you'll be able to work through it, talk with the relevant people, and then we'll start scheduling the validation calls, and those will go through October and the first couple of weeks of November, and hopefully that will give everybody adequate time to get those scheduled. So it'll be a similar process. I'll do a Sign Up Genius for the validation calls. If you need a copy of your previous one sent to you, I do have them. So let me know. Feel free to reach out to me and I can send you the most recent one that you did. Probably even older ones if you're interested in a really big retrospective look at what you've done, which this could be a fun time for that. So hopefully that will this timing will work for you, and you'll receive this in an email as well. Thoughts, questions, concerns? Okay, and then I just wanted to call your attention to, and just remember, don't forget about our upcoming events. The MCCA events page is your best friend for finding out what's going on here. We've got, we're launching our VFA report series. And Erica, did you want to take a minute to say a couple words about that?
Yeah, sure. So many of you know that the MCCA and several Michigan colleges have been partners in the Voluntary Framework of Accountability through AACC for a number of years. And that tool has evolved and changed over time. And there's a lot of terrific resources in there. So but we also know that there are a lot of institutions that report their data to the VFA, but don't use it very much. And so we are launching a webinar series beginning on August 26th. And then we will continue with 5 sessions that are very much focused on the projects that Jenny described a couple of slides ago. So we'll start with an overview of the VFA reports. But then a few weeks later, we'll do a session focused on VFA for developmental education, and we'll just look specifically at those DevEd metrics. And then a couple weeks later during the My Best workshop, we will focus on some of the metrics that specifically focus on economic stability and equity as well. So Jenny put the upcoming events on the MCCA website, which is really easy to get to. Even though it's a data presentation and we have invited the IR folks to join us, and they've helped us kind of design what these presentations look like, we are encouraging all folks at the community college to join that webinar series because we think that getting that information out to a variety of different people is really helpful. So let me know if you have any questions about that.
Thanks, Erica. The other thing I wanted to call your attention to is a breaking news alert on the Student Success Summit. We are going virtual with the Student Success Summit. I'm sure that's no surprise to everybody. Our theme is living our Vision 2020, living our values. So it's going to take place over 2 weeks in September. And we're going to spread it out. This is one of the longest Zoom meetings that I think that we will, not the Student Success Summit. This particular meeting is the last of the series of meetings that we designed early on in our pivot to virtual, this meeting that was scheduled to go for 3 or more hours. So we've decided now that we don't want to have meetings that go for 3 or more hours because it's really hard to keep attention for that long. So we're spreading this out over 2 weeks of 2-hour sessions. So it's a late afternoon. So spend the end of your days in September with us. We will be posting the information about the summit to its own webpage, and that will be coming soon. But I wanted to alert you that we would be doing the kind of the format of the Student Success Summit. And I see a couple of chats, so let me just pause. Okay, yes, Katie, thank you. Anybody have any questions about the summit? Okay.
Jenny, this is Erica. I'll just add that we have, we can accommodate up to 1,000 people in each session. So we will be reaching out to all of you and the many people who have registered for our events over the last few months to make sure that you get information about that. So For those of you who are often responsible for spreading this information around your campus, you know in the past we've typically needed to limit participation to about 20 people per institution, and in fact we can go above 1,000 if we want to as well. So please share widely when we put that information out.
Okay. Finally, as always, if you have any questions or you want to follow up, you can contact us. We will have the slides from this meeting are already available on the event site where you registered if you go to past events. We will get the recording rendered. Give us a little time for that. These are taking longer than usual. But we will get that also posted on that same event site. And we will look forward, and then, oh, Jill has raised her hand. Okay, hang on.
Just a quick question, Jenny. I wasn't thinking of, for the Success Summit, it starts at 3. Is that ending at 5 then? Like what time are you, what's the time?
They will end at 4:30 or 5.
Okay.
There might be some that go to 5:30, but yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else for the good of the order? I want to just take a moment again to thank Hannah, Davis, Rob, and Gretchen for being with us and sharing a fantastic amount of thought-provoking information. I just think there's so much to digest here, and I'm looking forward to going back to the links and the postings that you guys referenced and kind of digging into them separately one at a time, as I hope you all are too. Thank you to the mentors who helped with the breakout groups, Lindsay, Paige, and Nathan. Thanks for being part of those groups and helping with the report out. And thanks always to my fantastic colleagues, Katie and Erica. Katie, you are also fantastic. And don't forget to check out the tweets and to stay tuned for more from us as always. And if I have no further questions, I'm going to release all of you into your July afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, thanks.